Hi there, this video is for IB diploma students who are doing English A or any language A really, language and literature, and it's going to be talking about the individual oral, the IO, which is a relatively new assessment that IB brought in for students starting their studies in 2019. So we're going to run through this in about 10 minutes, brief overview. Everything here is taken from the official IB subject guide, so hopefully this will help you prepare with some confidence. So let's have a look, firstly, the overview of what the oral is. It's a 15-minute presentation and discussion, 10 minutes of you talking, 5 minutes questions and answers with your teacher. It's recorded, the oral is recorded, it doesn't have to be videoed, and it's worth about 30%, worth exactly 30% for SL students and 20% for HL students. Good news is you can prepare for this in detail beforehand. You know what you're going to be talking about before the oral, which is different from the earlier oral exams for Language A. At the bottom here you can see this graphic. You choose a literary text that you've studied in class and a non-literary text, and then you pick around about 40 lines from both of those, so 40 lines from literary, 40 lines from non-literary, and then you tie them together through what's called a global issue. So both, you have to be very careful beforehand, the literary text and the non-literary both deal with the same global issue. I'll talk about what global issues are in a bit, but that's essentially the glue, the central thread that runs through your presentation is the global issue. And you're talking about how both of the texts treat and deal with that particular issue. Grading, similar to other IB Language A grades, first two, A and B, are to deal with the general understanding, your knowledge of the text, and also your close reading skills, how you can analyse and evaluate. C and D are more to do with the organisation, how cohesive, how fluent, how well developed your structure, your presentation is, and also your use of language. Is it sophisticated and complex? It kind of needs to be to get towards the top end of the grades. Okay, so possible global issues. You can see a graphic here about Sustainable Development Goals. It's a new thing for the course. I think it's very worthwhile. It deals with some real life issues, makes the course particularly relevant. I think, which is good. You can see some ideas here, but it is very flexible. It's really up to you, largely what you choose as a global issue. So just some ideas there. All right. So when you've got an idea, what do you do with that idea? In another video I did, I actually went through this process myself to kind of experiment and see what it was like. So you can listen to a sample answer in one of the other videos here. In general terms, you're allowed to have 10 bullet points that outline your structure. You can bring that into the actual exam. It will get sent off to IB, so don't write down a full script. That's not really in the spirit of things. Equally, remembering an entire IO is not really recommended. But this is really to give you something to work from when you're delivering your oral. You should give the extracts to your teachers about 3 weeks beforehand, so they can check that the global issue is appropriate, that the extracts are appropriate, that kind of thing. If you're looking at a non-literary text that's quite short, like an advert or a photo, you need to have several others that are connected, usually around 10 other similar non-literary texts would make up what's called a body of work. And if you do that, you need to be very, very sure that you refer to the other texts in your oral. You don't only focus on the one short image or advert or photo. In the actual oral itself, you can bring the extracts, the unannotated, clean extracts, and the outline, the 10 bullet points, you can bring into the oral, but nothing else. Okay, so top 5 tips for doing the oral. Picking your global issue is crucial. IB says it doesn't really want a wide general thing like race or feminism, something much more specific, such as limited access to education for maybe women, or something connected with racism or ethnic groups, that would work. The extracts have to be used in order to talk about you have to use the extracts in order to talk about the wider body of work. If you only talk about the extracts in isolation and do just close reading, line by line account, or even worse, a summary, then you're not going to score highly. So bear that in mind. They're like a jumping off point to enable you to talk about the wider texts as well. Your introduction is crucial. Obviously it sets the scene. I would say there's some definite must-haves in the intro. That would be stating what a global issue is clearly, explaining your extracts, where they are and where they come from. A little bit of context, but not too much. Don't want to make it into a sociology type presentation. A little bit about the context here and what the global issue is. And then also a thesis statement, which is your claim. So you're essentially saying these two texts or these extracts deal with this global issue in this particular way. And it may be similar, it may be different, but you need some kind of claim that you will then argue through as you give your presentation. IB has some examples, as well as the video that I've done on here. IB's quite good examples of how to do it and also how not to do it. They're definitely worth looking at. And lastly, practice. This is the IO. The new IO is good because you're in control. So record it, listen back to it, get your friends to listen to it, video it, ask friends for feedback, and see what you can improve at looking at, and keep looking back to the mark scheme to see what's needed. Okay, when you're actually planning, some things to think about before the oral to be careful of. You need to choose a particular key moment when you're picking your extracts. They have to be useful extracts that will get you into the global issue and allow you to talk about the wider text. No more than 40 lines. If it's a film, you're looking at dialogue of probably 1 to 2 minutes, something like that. You could use a video. Think about the broader issue that's going on here. In your extract, how is it linked to the global issue? Is it obvious? If it isn't, probably need to go back and choose a different extract. Authorial decisions is a big thing that IB talks about in the mark scheme and the guide. So essentially get inside the writer's head. Why are they talking about this issue? How do they treat it? Is it similar to the other non-literary or non-literary texts you're using? What techniques are used? What effect do they have? All of that should lead you back towards really the global issue and how it's being dealt with. Also the type of genre, the form of the extract or the text itself, you can talk about that. So once you've got this key moment, you're looking to really develop it. You've got your extract. Think about how it links to the overall text. Are there any implications going beyond just the surface meaning of this? Make sure you don't summarize the extract. That's not what they're looking for. And try and get into a wider argument that's logical and connected and developed. And obviously, appropriate technical language, it's a good kind of shorthand way of explaining terms, and it will help your criterion D grade. So think about any technical terms you want to throw in, but don't just list. Use them as a way into your discussion. And lastly, do all of these things separately, work your way through the process. When I was doing it, I found this particular process very useful, and you will find connections that maybe you didn't see originally, and you can play with that and develop your argument. I think that's one of the challenges they're looking for here. Okay, finally, the actual structure for the presentation itself. Initially, introduce your global issue, make it really front and center, obvious what it is. Introduce literary and non-literary texts, show where they come from. Think about a little bit of context to the global issue, and then weave your two texts into this, so your two texts then are connected through this global issue. Have a thesis statement, a claim, show how you're going to link the text to the global issue. They may be similar, they may have a different treatment, that's okay, but show how they're both connected to your global issue. I would first start with a literary text, but you could do it the other way around. Bring in your literary text, explain from your outline what your key points are, go through the extract section by section, picking out the relevant parts, maybe not line by line, you won't have time for that, but pick out relevant examples, show the effect they have on the reader, and also crucially, how they link to the global issue. Very similar with non-literary texts. Think about the author here and what they're claiming, what they're trying to do, and again, link it back to the global issue. I would then move on to compare the literary and non-literary texts in terms of the author, in terms of the form and the content, and again, how does that link to the global issue? Are they similar treatments? Are they different? Work your way through that as much as possible. And then finally, a conclusion, wrap it up, go back to your thesis statement and show that what you've proved, what you've just discussed has been proved fully. What do we learn about the global issue from those two texts? What choices has the author made? And what effect does that have on the intended reader of both of those texts? Okay, so that's a very brief overview of the individual oral. I hope that helps. Do plan carefully, do look at the examples, and make sure you've got a global issue that you're interested in, and that you have two texts that both work really well together, and also in terms of linking to the global issue. I hope that helps. Good luck with your oral planning.